Good afternoon and welcome. I am Matthew Buzzell, Associate Professor of Communication in the Pamplin College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, and it's my privilege to also be the director of your cinema series. I'm so pleased to see so many people here this afternoon. It's such a beautiful day, and yet you chose to be here. I think I have an idea why. We have a terrifically entertaining film, wickedly funny, and we have Academy Award nominated writer and director Whit Stillman with us to discuss this film with you after the screening. So, without any further ado, please enjoy Whit Stillman's Love and Friendship.
2 hours later.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome to our stage Mr. Whit Stillman.
Thank you. Sorry. We're not going to have the theme music in the background.
Whit, you and I are going to chat just for a little bit, and then we'll open it up to questions from our audience.
Do you think that's wise?
Yes.
Maybe we should talk for quite a while.
Okay.
A few minutes for the audience.
We had the great fortune to screen your first 3 films here last week, and of course, many of the people who saw your Academy-nominated debut, Metropolitan, made note that there is a wonderfully witty reference to Jane Austen in Mansfield Park in Metropolitan. So it begs the question, has this been a plan for many years to adapt this material?
No. I mean, I love Jane Austen, and the material that we had about the debate of Mansfield Park in Metropolitan helped develop some ideas for sequences in Metropolitan that related to Mansfield Park. Sometime after Metropolitan, the film business got the idea that maybe it'd be a good idea to start adapting Jane Austen again. So the first major project I was aware of was Sense and Sensibility, which in fact was first offered. So I was working then doing Barcelona for Rob Reiner's company, Castle Rock, and Lindsay Duran, the producer who had used to be in Castle Rock, sent me the script to see if I wanted to do Sense and Sensibility. And she said that actually she had first offered it to Rob Reiner because she thought that rather than approach Jane Austen as a English period piece, it should be approached as sort of a human comedy. And at that point, it was an early stage of that script, and I was in the middle of finishing Barcelona and thinking about Last Days of Disco, and I had the idea then that Jane Austen's so great, it's kind of unrewarding taking one of her 4 masterpieces and reducing it to a 90-minute film, and that a lot of competent directors could do a really good job with that. So the only thing I mentioned to them was that they had left out the predicament because Emma Thompson, when she adapted it, started with the dialogue scenes, and before the dialogue scenes, there's some narration which shows the predicament that these 2 girls are in. Their sister-in-law, their half-brother's wife, persuades him not to support them the way he promised the father to support them, and they're left nearly destitute, which in 18th century England or beginning of the 19th century, was a horrible problem for them. And so that whole poignant thing was not in her original script. And so they got Ang Lee to do that, and I think he just did such a wonderful job. I admire that film so much. For me, it's the sort of great romantic version of Jane Austen. And I think it's interesting that it was done with one of her sort of 5 principal novels that maybe it's not a masterpiece. So maybe there's room when something's not a masterpiece to have a lot of creativity go into the adaptation. So then I went through my own material, which were those first 3 films that you screened, that had some autobiographical element, and I was flailing around for other projects, and I found there's a big problem when you're adapting something that's under copyright, sort of recent books, and they're a very expensive option, and then buying the rights to the book. And generally he has like 2 years to do the script and have everything developed, and part of that 2 years is just doing contracts and stuff. And so you end up with very little time to really fret about the script. And I've been through that twice and had bad experiences with films not happening after a lot of work. And if you do a script based on a book you don't own, it's like building a hotel on top of land you don't own. It's a bad idea. And so I was thinking that obscure public domain material could be really interesting, perhaps to adapt. I found this because the one Jane Austen that I first read and didn't like was Northanger Abbey. And I went back to reread that to see if I still didn't like it. And I liked it. And in the edition after that, there's this little thing, Lady Susan. And I read Lady Susan, and it was just fascinating. It's such a funny piece, but it's not finished. So there's a lot of room to sort of do something else with it. And originally I thought it was so slight, it would have to sort of start as maybe a theater piece, and if it was good as a theater piece, maybe someday we could do the movie, sort of like an Oscar Wilde play. And so there were sort of good decisions made inadvertently, and one of them was to tell no one really about it, and to work without getting paid, essentially, and just have as a private secret thing between paid assignments I could work on myself. So that allowed the time of slowly changing it from what it was, which was very difficult to adapt to in the epistolary form that she had started with, just letters back and forth. It's not dramatized. And it just took a long time of these different bouts of working on it to get it into the form of something dramatic.
Could you speak a little bit about the development process? Because you brought so many wonderful elements to it. The tableaus where you introduced the characters, the use of text on screen, it used to great comedic effect at times.
Well, I think as a lot of filmmakers often say, I was just reading this biography of Hitchcock, and he just adored accidents. And so many accidents and inadvertent things are really helpful. So just now looking at the end of the film again, there's a scene where the characters are going into the church for the wedding, and you see the extras in costume walking towards the church, and a carriage comes in, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, this looks so stale and fake. And it's just the kind of exterior period scene I don't like, where all the extras are sprouting around, and it looks just so fake. And then the carriage suddenly jumps backwards, and the elderly couple crossing them were startled, and the man sort of does something. And so they were not saying anything because they were extras with no lines, but we dubbed in the man saying, hey, something like that. And that, fortunately, they weren't seriously injured or injured at all, but that little move of the carriage changed the staleness of that scene. So the idea of the text on screen came in really backwards. We had sort of rather marginal comment at the very end about the poem where they talk about her mien, meaning her face. But I don't think anyone would get that, like mien. And so I said, well, why don't we put the poem up on the screen while he's reading that? And then the editor, I think, had the idea of putting the letter they read up on the screen. And earlier, we had the big, sort of our big production shot in the film was shot sort of halfway through the shoot. And it's that first shot of the film with the crane shot at Langford, and all the characters are running around crying, and Lady Susan Lee's in the carriage, and Sir James Martin comes out, Lady Susan, Frederica, and the crane comes down, and we thought that was really going to be difficult and complicated, and would take all morning, and we got it like in the third take incredibly quickly, and we just loved that. We didn't want to do another one because there it was, and so we had all this time before lunch. We had all the camera and everything, so I said, well, just go up there and look dramatic, and there's some wind, so just we'll do portraits, looking dramatic. And then I went into the editing room, and the editor had taken the little descriptions and the names of all those people, but Chloe Sevigny and Stephen Fry had already finished their sequences, so we didn't have shots of them in this super dramatic thing. And so we looked through the footage and found single shots of them from one of their scenes to have them also identified that way. But it didn't really look like it was intentionally shot for that, it just looked like outtakes from something. So I remember from the Scorsese film Age of Innocence, he used that silent film effect of the iris, where you do a portrait framing of someone and you sort of out of focus background around it and in focus within the oval. So that made that work. And then each time we went to a new location with new characters, we shot their portraits of them.
It works wonderfully.
But so many of those things like come through the whole process of working on it.
You said that when you met with students yesterday, you referred to your films as our films. And it was certainly not lost on myself, certainly was not lost on my students. And coupled with the fact that on all of your films you share your director card. Could you speak a little bit about collaboration and perhaps a little bit about the working with an ensemble?
Yeah, well, it's absurd, the whole my film thing, and the our film thing can risk sounding like the royal we, but it's not that at all. It's the fact that each film has a whole group of people, just an enormous number of people, working on it, and very often you have really key collaborators you do many films with. So I think I've worked with Mark Swazo, the composer, one way or another in every film. Even when we decide to branch out with other people, Mark ends up being there at the end. And John Thomas did the first 3 films, and it would have been wonderful if he'd done them all, the cinematographer. And so, it's really a group thing, and I really, so many things in the industry have become habits just through a sort of contractual laziness. I find it deplorable that they're now this sort of fashionable trend for the end credits. But I understand sort of why they want to do it, because it's so frustrating having these requirements for single card credits. So all these people get a single card credit. So you have these incredibly lengthy, boring things where you're watching some insignificant scene-setting image, and there's the name of this producer, and the name of, this, the director and the cast, each person, and then you get to the cards, there are 2 people, and all this is sort of agent stuff, it's not filmmaking stuff. And I love I really think that people did things better in the 30s, where they just boom, 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 put all the credits on. Sometimes a single card, very nicely drawn and illustrated, would have like 12 key names on it, and I think that's the way to do things. And there are a lot of things from 30s cinema I try to put in the movies, like the bit at the end. I kind of regretted having to take out some scenes and some jokes, and so we had this footage, and I always liked it when they identified each actor with their image so people can remember, okay, that's Morfydd Clark, that's Xavier Samuel. And so we had that extra, it's mostly out, scenes we couldn't use, that we put in there.
You'd worked with Chloe Sevigny and Kate Beckinsale on Last Days of Disco. Was this project written for them specifically?
Well, when I was doubting about whether a film could be made out of Lady Susan, what reassured me was the fact that I knew that Kate Beckinsale would be really good in the part. I mean, if you know someone who would be really good in the part, it sort of helps you tackle the subject. But oddly enough, one of the last elements to come into place was Kate playing the part. Chloe actually was cast before Kate. Almost everyone was cast really before Kate, almost.
You worked with an incredible ensemble cast of English actors,
Yes.
particularly Tom Bennett as Sir James Martin is a real crowd-pleasing performance.
Yeah, this very silly rattle, Sir James Martin. I really learned something with that, because both Tom Bennett playing Sir James Martin and Justin Edwards playing Charles Vernon, the husband so eager to oblige, they're basically comic performers. Justin Edwards is a stand-up comedian also. They come out of comedy, And they really add so much to the roles, the parts, so much imagination, because originally it was terribly thin, the material that was the Sir James Martin role. Like that whole thing about Churchill, I thought it was really, really lame on the page. You read that, touching the bottom of the barrel here, and but he made it just magical, and it was much too long because he does the whole thing once and then comes back to it, does the whole thing again. And we kept trying to cut that scene and cut out the repetition. We found actually the repetition just makes it funnier and more absurd. That was really one. And another thing, I mean, it was so great what he did in what's called the table reading, before you start shooting, when you go over the material. It was just so wonderful that I just got the idea I had to get him more material. And so he came for fittings one day, and I said, well, and we were going to finish early that day, so I said, well, couldn't we shoot something with Tom here? He said, well, we'll have to pay him more, because he's only getting a rehearsal fee today or something. It was one of those free fitting day. We have to pay him if you shoot it. And I said, okay, we'll pay him. And then I wanted him to do something with Lady Susan about giving her that loan that allows her to get the carriage and go into town in her townhouse. And then the production crew is always trying to frustrate whatever you want to do. So they said, oh, it would take too long for Kate to change into a new dress, and maybe the new dress isn't ready, it'd take too long. So okay, put Kate behind the door, and this is a different location that this is supposed to take, and we're not going to be in that location for 2 weeks. Okay, just get him against the door, Kate's inside the door, and he's just talking to her through the door. And so we got that, and then during the course of the shoot, the wonderful Irish producer, Katie Holly, at one point referred to the 12 Commandments. I said, okay, that's going into the film. So sort of I got up early, like at 4 a.m. To write that, and what for me was it was pretty interesting and entertaining, the 12 Commandments, but the best thing was the idea that there were 2 you could tip off.
What can you tell us about the production of the film? The film was shot in Ireland.
It's really funny because I was very timid at the idea of doing 18th century period film on a tiny budget, or it wasn't so tiny, but it's really small for that kind of thing. $3 million, which was considered very small for that, and because we had actors, we had to stars we had to pay something to, and it turns out it's really easy because there are a lot of people really skilled in this area. They've done a lot before. There are these wonderful costume houses. It's all really based in London, a lot of the support houses, but the people in Dublin are absolutely brilliant. And so I was with the costume designer. We were in London together for fittings of the actors as she got these wonderful outfits. And then she and her team were making most of the dresses for Kate and Chloe, and key ones for Morford Clark, the Frederica. And they just, it's sort of dial a cab for the horse-drawn carriages. We went out and looked at the carriages at this place that rents them out, and the people, it turns out, who take care of horses and carriages in the present day, if you put a white wig on them and knee breeches and cloaks, they look just like people you'd imagine would be taking care of horses 2 centuries ago. And they're really, the grumpy big guy driving the carriage in the first scene, who's just so perfect for that. He owns this carriage company. Apparently, he's a very wealthy man, one of Dublin's wealthier men. So you're getting all kinds of people doing this.
The film is also so wonderfully lit. Very naturalistic light. It's not overlit as we see in some period films. Could you talk a little bit about your work with your cinematographer? How the film was visually constructed, if you had any?
Well, it's a kind of a runaway horse situation, where you have a horse and the horse goes away. Because, I think it turned out really well. But that is not the photography necessarily, entirely, that I would think of or do. He's a wonderful photographer. It's sort of, maybe he's sort of the Jaguar, and I'm the Volvo as far as cinematography. And so he comes from, he's Dutch, he comes from that tradition, the very strong tradition, and I mean, I think it could have been gentler, the lighting. It could have been, I mean, in retrospect, it could have been, you know, warmer and easier on the actresses. So there was sort of a bit of rebellion when the actresses saw the film, because it's kind of cruel lighting, you know, so maybe it's very natural to have light come in windows that way, but I'm not a great believer in naturalness in cinema. I think it should be made quite a bit prettier and better than reality. If we're charging these prices, free screenings at Augusta University. But you have to get here.
After we wrap up here, you're going to be signing copies of the Love and Friendship book.
Yeah,
Tell us about the book.
Well, the book is, it's kind of different from the movie, because getting these channels of agreeing to, you know, write the book, and actually I had the contract to write the novel before I got the film off the ground. But then, when it came to writing the book, I finished the shoot, and I realized how funny Sir James Martin was. And as part of my research, I've been reading this rather pompous memoir of Jane Austen by her nephew. And I thought, what if Lady Susan and Sir James Martin had a nephew who was devoted to his aunt, Lady Susan Martin? And he wanted to defend Sir James Martin and defend Lady Susan and denigrate everyone else, including Jane Austen. So it turned into a whole other sort of humorous project where I was able to get in a lot of my philosophy about pretty much everything, and theology. There's all kinds of subjects in it, because I didn't want it just to be, you know, jokes in the film. I wanted to have a lot of other stuff. And the experience I had with writing a novel of Last Days of Disco, it's sort of unrewarding to come out with a novel, you know, in that case 2 years after the film. But then it was published in France 14 years afterwards, with people not really knowing the movie, and the novel itself did really well as a sort of standalone thing, and it got something called the Pre-Fitzgerald, the S. Fitzgerald Award, that was really fun to get. And so, I mean, I think the novel really stands on its own and got really good reviews in the Times of London, New York Times, and things like that.
How about,
so I hope you'll buy it. It's also cheap.
I already own it.
I know, you meaning you.
Why don't we open questions up to the audience? Do we have microphones at the ready?
Or shouting. You can do shouting too.
Could we bring the lights up in the house just a touch, please? Thank you, Patricia. I think I see a hand here.
Thank you for coming. When dealing with adaptation, I feel there's a tendency to be, especially for audiences, especially for people who are fans of the original source material, to be overly hypercritical of the product. Was there ever a general fear that, Jane Austen fans are going to be super nitpicky and hate this?
Yes, that was a worry. I mean, I think a lot of times people are working on adapting books that they really have no particular feeling for. It's a job, and I really felt sort of at the heart of Jane Austen obsessiveness, and I was bringing forward something not that many people knew, and sort of adding to the shelf of Jane Austen stories, accessible people in a way that was easier than reading the epistolary novel, that I think is sort of tough sledding. It's just the format it's in. So I had the advantage of something that's really obscure without a big fan base. The decision I made that was much more controversial than I thought it would be is that Lady Susan is not her title, and I didn't think it's a really good title. I had to listen to a Spanish distributor go on a screed about how terrible it is with movies with Anglo-Saxon names as the title, which he said in Spain, was just so boring. I think it was Agnes Brown. He had to distribute that. He just thought it was a terrible title, which I agree with him. And so I thought that, just name titles, Emma, I don't think it's a good title, really. So I thought Love and Friendship was a wonderful Jane Austen title. And since Lady Susan was not the title she put in the book, it was untitled, and Love and Friendship was the title she used for something that was of no interest as a story. Like when she was 15, she wrote something she called Love and Friendship. And I found that story just completely of no interest. And so I could take that title and put it on this, and it would be in the line of Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice and all that. Turns out that Jane Austen's Juvenilia has had a lot of admirers, so there are people who do like the original story, Love and Friendship, and I question their taste and judgment. But and so generally speaking, the film was hugely well embraced by the Jane Austen admirers, the deep fans of the books, and I felt that I was within that phalanx, and so that was great. It really helped the film a lot. But the people I found who gave us a lot of grief were two people who had taught Lady Susan like all year long or for a semester at a college, and they had their highfalutin academic ideas about what it's about. They're critical, and then I think there are people who are proprietary. There's one woman who's proprietary about Jane Austen. I think she owns it, and she. But generally, it's really fantastic that way. I think it's a real problem. I noticed I had an argument with a critic who felt obliged, or his editors felt he was obliged to read the novel the film is based on right before he sees the film. And I said that's like the unkindest idea possible, because who does that? I mean, even the people who liked Gone with the Wind, it had been 2 years since they'd read it. They didn't read it the night before, and ruining all the suspense of the story. And I noticed that I very often like the movies based on books that I don't like at all. So I really like The World According to Garp movie, because I hated the novel. And E.M. Forster's Howard's End is one of my favorite movies, and I just think the movie's so much better than the awful novel.
How about another question? I see a hand in the back. After Louis Antunes.
I just wanted to say thank you for such a beautifully crafted and engaging film, although I'm thinking we might disagree on that first point. Aesthetically, coming from a more European tradition in filmmaking, this feels like a masterpiece and feels like a living Flemish painting,
Well, I won't go into the details of the process of color timing in Amsterdam, but I'm glad you like the final result.
But my question is actually more directed to the process of adaptation, and I wanted to connect to that wonderful conversation with our students that you had in Professor Buzzell yesterday. And you mentioned something that really caught my attention, that you don't feel like you know a character before you hear that character talk. And I was curious to know, when you read Jane Austen's work, if you hear the characters the same way you hear when you somewhat appropriate those characters into your own work, or if that process comes at a different stage or point. If you could tell us a little bit about that voice between the voice of the characters in the novel and your own characters. Thank you.
Well, I think it's one of the wonderful things about Jane Austen's great mature work, that every sentence is sort of a voice of someone or other that you can be very interested in and identify with, and sort of be educated by. Just the perception, the wonderful perception of everything, and the humor. The way she sort of combines sort of the social observation, dramatic observation, moral sense, and a comic sense. It's really extraordinary.
Do we have another question? Yes, I see another hand there in the back.
Last Days of Disco obviously was inspired by the events surrounding Studio 54. While it is never identified that way, what was your, how do you look at that now in this cultural moment, in this time that we're in, the whole notion of disco's death and how that connected back to the end of Studio 54? And what do we learn from that artistically?
Well, just last week I got a chance to watch part of this documentary they made about Studio 54. And I mean, I really believe in fiction and not trying to pretend to show things how they really are. Because I think everyone looks at things through their own very subjective, imaginative glasses. And it's also true with adaptation of books. I mean, I think that the movie should be evaluated as a movie independently of anything else. And even when people are telling stories about real people, if it's not some sort of hatchet job on someone that's really unfair and kind of immoral in that way, I think if it's made differently, that's not a very serious criticism of something. And so I really wanted to do a fictional disco in film that was going to be like the feeling I had going to Studio 54, like the idea of a lot of people had when they got in to, you know, that club or a club like it, but not precisely about the club. And so when I heard about the competing film, everyone was really upset that there was going to be a competing film at the same time as our film. There's this film called 54, which we would laugh at because no one called Studio 54. They all called it Studio. It's called Studio. You're going to Studio tonight? Let's go to Studio. But anyway, I thought the silver lining in that was that I thought people would say, well, that's covering Studio 54. This other film is the fictional film that's not trying to be Studio 54, and that we would not be criticized if it didn't have the right number of whatever subgroup it is that people feel would be in Studio 54, because the reputation of our film has grown over time in a really nice way, as it's been shown on TV and through Criterion and things like that. But we were given a really rough time when it came out by a lot of these people who say, oh, nightclubs weren't like that. And it's true that we did do the poetic license of having people able to talk occasionally without shouting. When I interrogate or question the people who were saying how authentic it was, they then say, oh, I never went to a disco, I only like punk rock. And so there's this journalistic idea of what disco was that they latched onto, and then they beat you over the head if you don't do their cliche. And so, I mean, it's kind of false that disco died in the sense that before sort of 75, 76, there really was a period of sort of no social life, no dancing, no places to go. Maybe there were juice bars and people taking drugs. It was really grim. There's no longer dancing in bars, as we have in that film. And then once disco died, there still were all these other dance clubs that started and other dance music. And some of the dance music in the early 80s, mid-80s was really fantastic. I think Boy George was then. And so it was kind of false that disco entirely died in the sense that that kind of nightclub did go on. I think this is probably a pretty bad time now. It seems it's not a good time to dance music as far as I know. But how would I know?
Do we have another question? Yes, we have a question here down front.
Yes, I have a structural question about the film, and that is
Structural question.
regarding the carriages. You mentioned carriages earlier, and if there was anything that was a great transitional device and actually a mood-setting device, and to me, and something that dealt with secrecy and darkness and openness and closeness, was there a lot of thought put into exactly those carriages and how they function as transitional devices within the film. Am I making any sense?
Yeah, but it was more kind of in a very utilitarian way, just, the utility of what we could do with that, to move from one thing to another quickly and sort of wipe the screen and have something else come after it. Where there was a lot of thought was really the costume department with things like Kate Beckinsale's wardrobe. So at the very beginning of the film, she's in full widow regalia, widow's weeds, really dramatically a widow in black hat, veil, everything. And then the slow transition, into dark grays, and then very dark mauve, until where she's trying to seduce Reginald, sort of with the door to her bedroom open behind her. She's, dressing almost as if the red of a bordello. And so there was a lot of thought in that area. So we occasionally felt, but not too much.
I have a question.
Can I ask a Barcelona question?
Sure, what's that? The subtext?
Did you ever figure out which way to shave?
Obviously not. But what was the name of that Mexican place? Los Cabos? I sort of misestimated the time for walking to and from Los Cabos Mexican restaurant. So I didn't really have good time to shave before coming here. But I think it's true what the Gillette commercials used to say, that you go in the direction of the beard, but it just seems so illogical. I just try to shave a lot.
Another question down in front. Yes.
You.
Yes. Oh, excellent. So obviously music was a large influence on Last Days of Disco, and I was just wondering, has music influenced your writing of any of your other films?
So the question is, music was a big influence on Last Days of Disco. Has music influenced the other films? It influences me hugely, music. I always write with music playing. And now with Spotify, it's a big distraction because I love the music that is suggested that you don't really know. And I then research the singer and find out everything about them and get in touch with their kids. But it's a great procrastination device. And but I think what's best is to have a kind of mixtape version. The songs you listen to over and over again. Now often, since a lot of the pop songs one likes have words, and words can get in the way of what you're writing. There are classical composers Baroque, in my case, Baroque composers that I love listening to and having on. And then this dream of a Jamaican project comes out of a session with the early mid-60s Jamaican music. And any chance of using music. I think the way this started a little bit was with Metropolitan doing this super low budget film with just a lot of dialogue scenes. And it's like, what can we do that will be more like something sort of fun and cinematic and extroverted and visual, and having the characters dance. Did that. And that also was a bit of an inspiration for making Last Days of Disco.
We have another question here.
I'm just curious about something that went by me too fast in the end credits. There was some reference to the absolution of Lady Susan.
Yes, well, that is the novel, and so I hadn't yet. I'm not sure if I'd finished the novel by the time I put it in the end credits. So it sort of made me have to write the novel. So I think we say, about the soundtrack being available, and also love and friendship, in which Jane Austen's Lady Susan Vernon is entirely vindicated, which is the full subtitle of the novel. And it kind of gave me the theme for it. It's the other version of everything, where Lady Susan is the virtuous heroine, and the De Courcys are bad people. What? Yeah, it's a promotional gimmick.
Well, do we have any other questions? Because this might make for a great transition to sign a few books. Oh,
Hi. So I heard you say yesterday you write your scenes around these character interactions a lot of the time.
And it seems that you have the actors or performers that you like to work with. In Last Days of Disco, I noticed that there was a string of cameos from people from Metropolitan. How much thought went into making that happen?
Well, it's sort of been back and forth. So the cameos in Last Days of Disco, we have actors from the other two films, the first two films, Maxwell and Barcelona, who appear in small moments of Last Days of Disco. And I think that's part of reading Balzac's human comedy, where characters go back and forth and things. And the idea of a really popular disco like that was that you'd run into people from all different times of your life. Like someone you from San Francisco would be in town, so they'd go, and you'd see them, and someone from, from high school or something like that would be there. And so that was trying to make it sort of authentic that way from our point of view, and a chance to sort of see those actors again. One tricky thing was Taylor Nichols, who was in both Barcelona and Metropolitan. So he appears in Last Days of Disco, both as his Metropolitan character with no lines, just sort of in the background, escorting one of the actresses. And then he actually has a dialogue scene where he's with the girlfriend he's broken up with in Barcelona, sort of setting the disco film as before Barcelona. And one thing that did help was that I'd started the script to Barcelona, the idea of the two cousins, but it was too ambitious to do as the first film. And then in making Metropolitan, I discovered these two actors and thought, oh, you guys could be the cousins. And then I went back to writing the script. It was really helpful writing for those actors. And Last Days of Disco, actually, I'd seen Kate Beckinsale in a Jane Austen-derived film called Cold Comfort Farm, playing sort of this kind of Jane Austen character, essentially the Emma character. And so I thought she was wonderful. And the Charlotte character in Last Days of Disco was really written for Kate Beckinsale.
do we have another question?
I think everyone's done.
Okay.
Thank you very much.